community members and council staff to tonight's ordinary council meeting. My name is Councillor Jen Bray and I'm the Deputy Mayor of the Hepburn Shire Council. As Councillor Drylie is unwell, I'll be chairing tonight's meeting. I would like to acknowledge that Hepburn Shire acknowledges the Dja Dja Wurrung as the traditional owners of the lands and waters on which we live and work. On these lands, the Djara have performed age-old ceremonies of celebration, initiation and renewal. We recognise their resilience through dispossession, and it is a testament to their continuing culture and tradition, which is strong and thriving. We also acknowledge the neighbouring traditional owners, the Wurundjeri to our southeast and the Wada Wurrung to our southwest, and we pay our respects to all Aboriginal peoples, their culture and law. We acknowledge their living culture and the unique role they play in the life of this region. I now invite all councillors to stand and read the council's statement of commitment. We, the councillors of Hepburn Shire, declare that we will undertake on every occasion to carry out our duties in the best interest of the community, and that our conduct shall maintain the standards of the Code of Good Governance, so that we may faithfully represent and uphold the trust in this council by the people of Hepburn Shire. Tonight's council meeting will be conducted in person and virtually. The meeting is being live streamed on Council's Facebook page and you'll be able to view the proceedings of the meeting, councillors' deliberations and voting. The meeting is also being recorded and will be made available on Council's website as soon as practical after the meeting. In accordance with Chapter 6, Section 3 of our governance rules, a person including any representative of the media must not operate photographic, audio or video recording equipment or any other recording device at any council meeting without first obtaining the consent of the chairperson. I also remind everyone that local government decision-making does not afford the benefit of parliamentary privilege, and hence no protection is afforded to councillors and council officers for comments made during the meeting which are subsequently challenged in a court of law. Okay, so moving on to our first item of business. Just the meeting, those in attendance, apologies, sorry. I would now like to introduce council officers who are present at this council meeting. We have Mr. Bradley Thomas, Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Andrew Burgess, Director of Organisational Services, Ms. Lee McCallum, Director of Community and Development, Mr. Bruce Lucas, Director of Infrastructure and Delivery, Mr. Chris White, Manager of ICT, Ms. Rebecca Smith, Manager of Governance and Risk, Ms. Alison Blackett, Acting Manager of Planning and Building, and Ms. Pauline Maltzis, Senior Planning Consultant. Mr. Thomas, do we have any apologies for tonight's meeting?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, there are no apologies for tonight's meeting, noting that Councillor Tessa Halliday is on parental leave and also noting that Councillor Tim Drylie is coming to us electronically. So for those in the audience today, up on the big screen or online for those at home.
Thank you. Point 5, declarations of conflict of interest. Councillor, does anyone have a conflict of interest to declare tonight?
Yes, Madam. Yes, Madam Deputy Mayor. I have a conflict to declare on item 10.1, PA 3333, 70 Camp Street, Daylesford, and it's a material conflict of interest.
Thank you. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Deputy Mayor. I have conflict of interest on item 15, general business, application for leave.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. Councillor Drylie.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I have a conflict of interest for 14.4, approval of the interstate travel to attend the National General Assembly Partners in Progress Conference 2022, and it's a material conflict of interest.
Thank you, councillor Dryly. I can't see your hand electronically. Can you raise your hand in the meeting? Thank you. You have a conflict?
Yeah.
So I'll ask the officers present. I now ask you whether you have a conflict of interest in any items presented before council tonight. Mr. Thomas.
Deputy Mayor, I also have a conflict of interest in item 14.4 as councillor Dryly in relation to the approval of interstate travel.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Any other conflicts of interest tonight? No. Thanks, council staff. Confirmation of previous minutes. Councillors, we have a recommendation before us that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of council held on the 20th of April 2022 and the minutes of the special meeting of council held on the 10th of May 2022, as previously circulated to councillors, be confirmed. I have an officer's recommendation before us. I'm in search of a motion. Do I have a mover? Councillor Simpson. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Henderson. Would anyone like to speak to the motion? Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Councillor Hood?
Thank you, councillor. Councillors, we're being asked to accept the minutes of council meeting on the 20th of April and the 10th of May. At our meeting on the 20th of April, we considered the aquatic strategy, the renaming of a creek, and we considered possible changes to the rating system, all of which were very important topics, some of which had many months, if not years of work put into them. On the meeting on the 10th of May, we considered a very important topic, that being the draft 22-23 budget. The minutes of all of those meetings tell us nothing. They're completely lacking transparency. There's no detail, no information on them whatsoever for any interested stakeholder. They're therefore deficient and should not be adopted. I will note that within the Local Government Act, Part 2, Clause 9, page 26, the Local Government Act lists 9 overarching governance principles. One of them is, quote, the transparency of council decisions, actions and information is to be ensured, end of quote. These draft minutes do not pass that test.
Thank you, councillor Hood. Does anyone wish to speak for or against the motion? I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Sorry, Mr. Councillor Dryly, I didn't see your hand. Was that for or against? I'll take the vote again.
It's for, but I think it's fading into the background for some reason.
I'll take the vote again. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Items of urgent business. Are there any items of urgent business?
No.
There being no items of urgent business, I will move on to item 8, the presentation councillor reports. 8.1, Mayor's report. Councillor Dryly.
Thank you, Councillor Bray. It's been another busy month at council at a time when we're desperately trying to regain our sense of business as usual as a shire. However, the month has been less than usual in many ways, with a spike in COVID cases across the state, disrupting many business and family routines. Along with this, other factors such as general staff shortages in a number of areas across different departments, but particularly in planning and in small businesses, rises in interest rates and construction costs, a shortage of affordable housing and rental options, and the coronavirus have all continued to disrupt and put pressure on our people and services in Hepburn Shire. I'm proud of what we're achieving as a small rural shire, given the current circumstances. We're frequently aiming to do better at a high standard and with our limited pool of resources. We're also aware that there are areas that we continue to improve on and our increased community engagement and consultation has aimed to improve the community feedback process. We do ask for your patience during this turbulent time as we all try to make sense and gain better control of the world that is unfolding as it is. I'd like to give a special call out to the 56 households in Creswick who are still unable to return home after the January storm and flood event. For some people, life is a little more, less than normal than others. I, for one, am not chairing tonight's meeting because of my own personal encounter with COVID and its effect on my voice and capacity, and been recovering from its grip over the past week or so. And I know firsthand what a lot of other people have recently or currently going through. Community consultation and engagement has been an important aspect of the past month as we're working on a number of important strategies concurrently. We've delivered our draft budget for 2023 for public consideration and seeking public feedback on the sale of the Rex building. I was pleased to also attend community pop-up sessions for our Creswick structure plan, to chair Municipal Recovery Committee meeting for the January 22 storm and floods, and catch up with the community members to discuss the controversial Western Victorian Transmission Network project. I was also pleased to give an opening address and attend events at Clunes Booktown Festival, attend the Great Trentham Spud Fest, and a number of Anzac Day services in Clunes and Kingston. Make sure you get along to our online or in-person arts and culture strategy sessions. Join in our webinar tomorrow evening to discuss our draft budget, and listen in tonight as we deliberate on our newly completed early years strategy. We'll also soon be hearing about the results of our Sustainable Hepburn strategy, and I look forward to working with our community and stakeholders on our affordable housing strategy. There are so many good things happening in this shire of ours, and we are supported by a dedicated and talented team of officers working behind the scenes to make it all happen. I'm honoured to be playing a part in it all. Today, we proudly raise the rainbow flag for Ida Hobbit Day, which is an international day that supports the ending of homophobia, biphobia, interphobia and transphobia. Hepburn is an inclusive shire and we are proud of Hepburn Shire's diversity. We know that our community is enriched when we respect and support people equally, regardless of their background, ability or identity. Every person without exception deserves to be safe, supported and equal. I've tabled along with this report a list of meetings and events that I've attended over the past month. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dryly. Councillors' reports. Councillor Brian Hood.
Thank you. Councillors, it's very pleasing to report that the iconic Trentham Spudfest was successfully held on the 7th of May, emerging as big as ever from the fog of COVID-19. A misty day didn't deter a huge crowd of locals and visitors from enjoying an entertaining day, celebrating the town's proud heritage in potato farming. And I thank my councillor colleagues and council officers for their attendance. This follows similarly successful events in recent times, such as the Lionville Woodchop, the Bellardo Tractor Pull, and the Blackwood Woodchop and Easter Festival, all of which were community events, exceptionally well attended and a breath of fresh air. It was heartwarming to see so many people out enjoying each other's company and the spirit of community. Last month also marked Anzac Day, and I was honoured to participate in ceremonies in Trentham and Bellardo on behalf of council. Following the Trentham event, I was motivated to write to the principal of Trentham Primary School, Arthur Lane, commending him and the school community for the manner in which his students performed so admirably at the ceremony's proceedings. Finally, it is with relief that I can report that the much used and much loved Domino Trail has been reopened between Trentham and Lionville following the devastating June 2021 storm, thanks to the tireless efforts of Council's storm recovery team under the leadership of Bruce Lucas and Amanda Weston and our partners at DELP. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hood. Councillor Simpson.
Please see my table my report that I will table.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. The next in the list is Councillor Jen Bray, that's me. I'm tabling my report But I wanted to mention that, yes, earlier today, we raised the rainbow flag for Ida Hobbit Day, and I was happy to be there at the ceremony. I also was able to watch a bit of Eurovision on the weekend and enjoyed the performance of Sheldon Riley, who came to perform at our Chill Out performance here earlier this year. Excuse me, I'll just remind the gallery that there's no interaction with the floor. Thank you. Ida Hobbit Day reminds us that we are not all the same, but that we can celebrate that difference and rather than react in fear and ignorance. And flying a pride flag or wearing rainbow colours is a powerful expression of support for this one day. But each of us can take responsibility every day to be informed and to stand up to discrimination wherever we see it. I'll call on Councillor Leslie Hewitt to give her report.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. This month, the start of the month, I was honoured to represent the council at the Anzac Day services at Eganstown, and then again, Councillor Bray at the Dalesford Anzac Day service. And it was pleasing to see the numbers at both those ceremonies, recognising the impact that conflict has had for many generations on all of us, not just those who went and fought. And I would like to give out my thanks to Officer Michelle Dove for her work in organising the various council wreaths. 3 weeks ago, I was also pleased to attend the opening of the 5,000 Club at Victoria Park. The 5,000 Club provides free lunches for community members, and those who can make a donation, but those who can't or don't feel able to, don't have to. The 5,000 Club has reopened again recently after 2 years of COVID lockdown. And it's appropriate to mention it this week because this week is National Volunteers Week. And certainly the volunteers, Loretta Little, Tim Cansfield-Smith and their team, along with deserve our thanks for the support and efforts they make in the community, as do the volunteers of many other organisations. This month, I've continued to look at ways of preventing family violence and attended an Our Watch seminar on what local government might be able to do to prevent family violence. That's been particularly relevant in the various committees that I chair for council and that have met this week or this month. The Gender Equity Advisory Committee met, the Municipal Health and Wellbeing Committee, and also the Disability Advisory Committee. All those committees, one of their issues that they're considering is family violence within the Shire, because we know from statistics that we have a high rate of all forms of family violence. The Disability Advisory Committee is also in the process of developing the new Disability Action Plan, and I'm sure we will look forward to seeing what that entails. The Dalesford Hospital turns 160 years old on Sunday, and there will be an exhibition at the Dalesford Historical Society for the museum opening for a week from 10 till 2. And I would encourage people to go and have a look at the historical display, but also of interest will be the presentation of the Dalesford Hospital Master Plan, and that will be available for community members to look at. Councillor Dryly, in his Mayor's report, spoke about COVID. We learnt today that Central Highlands Rural Health currently providing home nursing care to 506 residents in the Shire who are suffering from COVID. It's an example of how the impact of COVID, how COVID is impacting on our workforce across the board. Councillor Dryly's talked about it in relation to council. We know there's a shortage of hospitality and accommodation workers, and now we know of also starting to learn about the pressures on our health system. So just thought people would be interested in that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hewitt. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Well, I haven't had that much to do this month, maybe because of the cold, but I did attend at the invitation of Danielle Green, who's the Cabinet Secretary for Veterans at the Andrews Labor Government. I attended a function or a presentation where she gave $20,000 odd to the Creswick RSL to assist them in their work. Then later on in that day, also was there when Danielle Green opened Booktown. And it was really good to catch up with Danielle. For those who don't know her, she is the member for Yan Yean, but has had a long association with Hepburn Shire, particularly Clunes, and has been very, very good in making sure that we've been able to get grants over the years and putting a good word in for us. And she was one of the people instrumental, I might say, in putting a good word in on bike trails for Creswick a few years ago. So describe me as an old and dear friend. Well, she's been more dear to me because she's given us the money for projects that we need. I also attended the dawn service at Creswick at the Cenotaph. That was followed up by gunfire breakfast, which is really good to get around and meet the old diggers and have a little bit of a discussion over the breakfast table. And then on to the Creswick Avenue of Honour at Kingston, where there were 120 people. And I was reminded as I drove down that avenue that every tree represented a young person in our very small Creswick Shire that gave their lives in the First World War. Some as many as 3 brothers on that tombstone. So it was really enlightening, but I also reminded them that there was another fight on, and there was a war over turf, and it's always wars are about territory. At the moment, those people out there again at war, BosNet over the transmission towers that are going across to destroy their livelihood. So that was a little reminder that I was able to give them. I then went to the Creswick Cemetery, where some of our later people are interred, people who have since passed in the various wars. And then on to what I must say was a huge success considering the times, 700 people, as told to me by a sheep counter. He assured me that he was within 30. He reckoned he had it down right. There were 700 people. And it was interesting to see that this year, the international military people were there from the training school at Laverton, and they come from a whole host of countries across the Asia Pacific region. And they have said to me on many occasions, they always want to come back to Creswick because the people were so friendly and welcoming. So they've been to many other places in Australia. They also visited Mount Prospect to meet with the Liberal Democrats people to make sure that all of the people in the political race know about the problems facing those farmers. I attended the structured plan pop-up and also Spudfest, and Trentham didn't disappoint. Brian might not have mentioned, my good colleague Councillor Hood mightn't have mentioned how cold it was, but it certainly wasn't disappointed. It was bitterly cold over there. But I can tell you the hearts of the people were very warm. And all of us councillors that went received a very, very warm welcome. And it was a really big success. Numbers were down, but it was a really well-run event and a great success. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. I have a recommendation that council receives and notes the mayor's and councillors' reports. I'm in search of a motion. Do I have a mover? Councillor Hood, seconder, Councillor Hewitt. Anyone wish to speak against the motion? Anyone wish to speak for the motion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? I declare that that is carried. Item 8.3, Chief Executive Officer's report. Mr. Todd.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. My report for this month's included in the agenda. Lots of highlights across the month. For me personally, probably a highlight's been my 1-year anniversary being appointed as the Chief Executive Officer at Hepburn Shire Council. Very pleasing to see the amount of actions that have been undertaken in the last month and the last 12 months with the councillors and officers, and extremely pleasing to note a number of positive comments from councillors tonight. Thank you for lots of things that have been happening during the month, particularly aquatic strategy adoption, creek renaming, been a number of events that councillors have touched on. Lots of work continues in our community engagement with the development of the strategy. And only last week we had our draft budget, $58 million budget that really responds to the council plan and the community feedback from the Hepburn Together project. It's been fantastic to celebrate Otter Hobbit Day today as well, and we had a number of staff present for that. So very pleased to be able to continue to lead this great organisation. And the recommendation before you tonight is that council receives and notes the CEO's report for May 2022.
Mr. Thomas, we have an officer's recommendation. I'm in search of a motion. Councillor Hood, to so move.
Yes, I move.
Seconder, Councillor Henderson. Discussion, those in favour? And that motion is carried. Move on now to item 9, public participation time. We have a number of questions in related to planning applications came through to council. As part of council's governance rules 2020, section 54.10.9, these questions have actually been disallowed as they relate to a proposed development. However, a response will be provided to the questioners. The following questions were received in relation to tonight's meeting, and I will read the question and the response. Question 1 is from Lior Alba-Kripa, and her question is, at the 23rd of November 2021 council meeting, the council resolved to request the Chief Executive Officer to prepare a scope to undertake a planning project that will review possible solutions of staffing, accommodation and community facilities that were to be included in the Hepburn Hub, end of quote. One of the most important community facilities which was to be included in the Hepburn Hub was the community cinema. Leo's question is, will council commit to including a space for a new community cinema in this new project? Thank you for your question, Leo. And the response is, the full scope of services to be provided with any new community facility project will have not yet been determined. The full scope and services to be provided in a new facility will be considered by council at a later date. Council determined at the council meeting on the 23rd of November 2021 to work with the Daylesford Cinema Group on potential temporary and permanent solutions for the community cinema. Question 2 is also from Leo Alba-Kripka. With such clear, dedicated and passionate volunteer-run cinema, with a clear demand from the community for a safe, artistic community entertainment and cultural asset, what are the concerns with investing in a Daylesford cinema to become a destination for locals and tourists alike? Thank you for your question, Leo. As the scope and service that could be provided in a new facility have not yet been determined, no concerns currently been identified. A few of the considerations will include space available for all the identified services and how that facility may be financed. Question 3 comes from Adam Fawcett. He asks, I'm concerned that there's a lot of animosity and lack of trust out there in the community at the moment regarding the decision to cancel the Rex project. How does council plan to address this after the survey process? And what are council's strategies to encourage people to participate in community engagement with confidence again? Thank you for your question, Mr. Fawcett. Council adopted its community engagement policy in March 2021. The policy sets out a number of key promises to our community, and council will continue to improve and build upon its relationship with the community by the implementation of this policy. Question 4 is from Jennifer Beecham. Her question is $150,000 is allocated in the draft budget for the sale of the Rex. Why are additional costs envisaged above the normal duties of council officers? Thank you for your question, Ms. Beecham. The response is there is no new money allocated in the draft 22-23 budget for the Rex project. There is $150,000 set aside from the original project budget as part of the mid-year budget review for the community engagement regarding the proposed sale, the independent property valuation, the commencement of planning for the new project, and essential repairs to the building and current office facilities that had previously been deferred. Question 5 is from Julian McDonald.
No, I have a supplementary question.
Sorry, at this point, it has to have been already submitted by Monday at 10 o'clock. However,
So that's a change in practice.
supplementary question, I'll perhaps
Go
refer
to the
to
next one
government.
and I'll come back to you.
Can I will go to the next question and we will seek an answer to your question. Thank you for your question. And then I'll call on governance to give you an answer to that question. Thank you. I'll go to the next question from Julian McDonald. Ms. McDonald asks, regarding the Rex community consultation, how will viability of ideas suggested be explored? Thank you for your question, Ms. McDonald. Council will consider all of the community feedback regarding the proposed sale of the Rex building at the June or July ordinary council meeting. If council determines to further explore the viability of any of the strategies put forward as part of the community feedback, this feasibility work will proceed in accordance with council's direction. Okay. I'll go to the next question. Question 6 is again from Ms. McDonald. Our community is very definite in its view that there are 4 essential elements that must not be lost in either the redesign or the sale of the Rex Theatre. 1, heritage. We cannot lose the external and internal heritage architectural elements of this 95-year-old iconic building in our main street. And 2, cinema. We cannot lose our community cinema, an outstanding, successful and rewarding community asset. And 3, community space. We cannot accept the loss of the planned and promised spaces that would have allowed showcasing of our art and products and community meetings and performances. And 4, public toilets. Our community, our visitors, our families, and particularly our aged, depend heavily on the Rex public toilets. We were promised their priority in returning. We cannot accept their loss. The question is, will council commit to the heritage, the cinema, the community spaces, and the public toilets as they are essential non-negotiables in the assessment of any possible sale of the Rex Theatre? Thank you for your question, Ms. McDonald. The response is, council has commenced a process to sell the Rex and is currently in the process of inviting community feedback on the proposed sale. If the sale proceeds, then any future owner of the building will be required to comply with statutory planning and building requirements with any proposed works. Heritage considerations will form part of evaluating any permit applications for the proposed works. In regards to the community cinema, the community spaces and public toilets, these will need to be considered as part of developing a project scope and identifying what services may be included in any future facility in accordance with council's determination.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, under the previous local law, supplementary questions were allowed. Council adopted new governance rules in September 2020, following community consultation and changed a number of the practices of the council meeting, and supplementary questions are no longer allowed and all questions need to be submitted before the deadline. So no question can be allowed.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Unfortunately, I'm not able to take your supplementary question. However, if you would like to send that through to our Shire Act address, I'm sure officers are happy to respond to that in due course. Question 7 is from Mr. Edward Beecham. How will the community be informed about the findings of the consultation on the sale of the Rex? Thank you for your question, Mr. Beecham. Our response is that a further report will be presented at the June or July ordinary meeting of council for consideration. Question 8 is from Richard Spence. Will council ensure transparency in informing the community about the assessment of these strategies? Thank you for your question, Mr. Spence. The response is we assume that this question is in relation to the proposed sale of the Rex building. All of the feedback will be provided to councillors for consideration in their decision making. Their feedback will be provided to the community as far as possible without breaching the Local Government Act 2020. Question 9 is from Kay Powell on the topic of shooting at the Glenline Reserve. On the 4th of May, in the interest of transparency, I requested a copy of the licence given to the Daylesford Gun Club by council on the 24th of August last year. I have yet to receive it and was told that the advice had to be sought before it could be released. I would like to know why this licence, a document that should be accessible to the public, is being withheld and when I might receive a copy. Thanks, Ms. Powell. The response is council received the above request on the 8th of May 2020 and an initial response was provided on the 10th of May 2022. Sorry, 2022 for that previous date. An initial response was provided on the 10th of May 2022 advising that some further advice or direction was being sought. This is required as the draft licence was a confidential attachment to the council report, and in section 1251 of the Local Government Act 2020, it prohibits a person who is or has been a councillor, a member of a delegated committee or a member of council staff from disclosing confidential information. Prior to determining this request, advice is required to ensure that there is no breach of the Local Government Act 2020, and this advice is still pending. So hopefully we'll have a response soon. And question 10 is also from Ms. Kay Powell. At the community information session at the Glenline Reserve, it was stated that new soil tests have identified sites different to those originally tested, where contamination is less than the original sites. These new tests were news to the objectors of shooting resuming. These test results have yet to be made public, and have a copy of these news results would be appreciated. I'll add that to the request in question 1. Could you please, in layperson's terms, explain how areas deemed to be above legal limits of contamination are now okay? Thank you for your question, Ms. Powell. The response is, in the initial testing, lead levels were determined to have a health risk that is low and acceptable. This was accepted by the EPA. With regards to polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, or PAHs, this is a chemical compound that is found in many different sources or forms that show different risk levels to human health. Okay, I will attempt to make this as a layperson as possible, but it does get a bit technical. The PAH found in clay targets of the Glenline Recreation Reserve was concluded to be in a form and on a site that was considered to be a lower human exposure risk than the generic forms and sites that the initial PAH testing and analysis had considered and can be compared to. As part of the EPA accepted cleanup plan process, a risk assessment was completed, ensuring compliance with the required environmental regulations. When the new limits are legitimately and scientifically calculated, the updated test results were provided to council. The risk assessment used scientific data, site data, further soil testing and analysis, and follows national standards and guidelines to determine the updated site-specific PAH limits. The risk assessment was carried out using a contamination land specialist, and the conclusions were verified by an EPA accreditor auditor who specialises in contaminated land and has had past experience assessing land affected by shooting activities. All relevant information, including test results and recommendations, have been made public and are provided as the links on the Participate Hepburn website. These reports have the these reports have the latest test results and the locations where further tests were taken and the final recommendations. Ms. Powell, I hope that answer is satisfactory. If you need further clarification, I suggest you contact Shire at Hepburn for further clarification. Question 11 comes from Elizabeth Swan and again is related to the shooting at the Glenline Reserve. The motion passed on the 21st of August 2021 council meeting to grant a licence to Daylesford Field and Game Club lists a number of points. One is that there will be 6 monthly updates regarding what has been done to find a new venue to ensure a future for the club. This update is now overdue. Can council please give an update? Thank you for your question, Ms. Swan. The response is, council officers have been working with the Daylesford Field and Game Association to investigate alternative options to accommodate the continuation of the association's clay shooting activities during their suspended use of the Glenline Recreation Reserve. These options have included relocating to alternative sites and sharing or amalgamating with existing gun clubs within or outside the Hepburn Shire, which are continuing to be explored. Councillors have received a 6-monthly progress update on the relocation of the Daylesford Field and Game Association from the Glenline Reserve following the 17th of August 2021 Ordinary Council meeting. Officers will continue to work with the group to prepare a facility development and management plan that will assist in determining future project costs and the ongoing costs associated with operating and maintaining a single-purpose shooting facility. So it is to be noted that the Daylesford Field and Game Association have not formally executed their licence with council and as such have not recommenced their use of the Glenline Recreation Reserve. Question 12 is also from Elizabeth Swan. The Clunes Field and Game Club shoot every second Sunday of the month. Daylesford Field and Game Club shoot every first Saturday of the month. The two clubs have had events together where they shoot together. And the Daylesford Club's equipment is all housed in 2 containers and a shed. One more container would make a move an easier exercise. The Traralgon Field and Game Club shares a venue with the Geelong Club. The Daylesford Club doesn't shoot in Daylesford at present anyway. Why can't the Daylesford Club share with the Clunes venue? Thank you for your question, Ms. Swan. Our response is, council officers have been working with the Daylesford Field and Game Association to investigate alternative options to accommodate the continuation of the association's clay shooting activities. A number of options are being explored, including opportunities where existing facilities within the Grampians region could be shared. Question 13 comes from Anne Milton. Regarding the RECs, how will the viability of the strategies put forward to date be assessed? Thank you for your question, Ms. Milton. Council's response is, Council will consider all of the community feedback regarding the proposed sale of the RECs building at the June or July ordinary meeting of Council. If Council determines to further explore the viability of any strategies put forward as part of the community feedback, this feasibility work will proceed in accordance with Council's direction. Question 14 comes from David Nicholas Moore. Will Council ensure transparency by informing the community in detail about the reasons behind decision-making in relation to the RECs? Thank you for your question, Mr. Moore. The response is yes, as far as possible without breaching the Local Government Act 2020. Question 15 is from Kathleen McRae. What weighting will be given to community benefit in assessing viability of strategies? Thank you for your question, Ms McRae. The response is, we assume that this question is in relation to the proposed sale of the Rex building, and all of the feedback will be provided to councillors for their consideration. No weighting as such has been applied to any specific criteria as part of inviting community feedback on the proposed sale. Thank you for your patience, everyone. That concludes the public question segment. We now go to 9.2, requests to address council. We have two requests to address council that have been received for tonight's meeting. Any requests to address for planning matters will be heard as council considers each of those items. I now invite Ms Julian McDonald, who I believe is here tonight, to speak in relation to the Hepburn Hub at the Rex. Thanks, Ms McDonald. Ms McDonald, you have 3 minutes to address council.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for providing the opportunity to address this council meeting. Our community is very definite in its view that there are 4 essential elements that must not be lost in either the redesign or the sale of the Rex Theatre. Heritage. We cannot lose the external and internal heritage architectural elements of this 95-year-old iconic building in our main street. Secondly, the cinema. We cannot lose our community cinema, a proven, outstandingly successful and rewarding community asset. Number 3, in terms of essential elements, community space. We cannot accept the loss of the planned and promised spaces that would have allowed showcasing of our art, products, community meetings and performances. And finally, essential element number 4, public toilets. Our community, our visitors, our families, and particularly our aged population depended heavily on the Rex public toilets. We were promised priority in returning these. We cannot accept this loss. Even if council will not explore the many creative concepts and options confirming the need to retain and rethink the Rex and decides to sell the building, the council must commit to its heritage, to immediate financial help and locality provision for the Daylesford Cinema and community spaces, and to the provision of fully accessible public toilets in Vincent Street. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms McDonald, for addressing council. I now invite Mr Jeff Bain and Mr Peter Duncan. I've got both names. Perhaps is it one then the other? Thank you. I'll invite Mr Jeff Bain to address council.
Thank you very much. There may have been a bit of confusion because we sent the question through and it was addressed by Peter Duncan and myself. That wasn't read out, then I requested I address the meeting. So I'll do this really on behalf of Peter Duncan and myself.
Okay, thanks, Mr Bain. I'll give you 3 minutes to address council.
This address concerns the Rex. We ask council to take the time and advice to consider how best to implement its decision to separate the Rex. We assume that its decisions with respect to the Rex, council is concerned to optimise its cash position, minimise uncertainty and risk, ensure that community benefits which are realistic and commercially justifiable are exploited. We would like to suggest that before reaching any firm position on sale, council should examine, possibly inter alia, the following. 1, separate transactions for the front and back sections of the property, This may involve subdivision into two separate properties. 2, back section could be sold to a property developer for use in a number of ways, including an apartment development with parking on the ground floor, a commercial car park for use by visitors. Daylesford residents would be issued with permits to park in the centre of Vincent Street and in neighbouring streets. Curbside parking in Vincent Street could be removed, which would be attractive to the businesses and customers. A combination of the above or some other use. This concerns the back section. With respect to the front section, the old cinema, it would be necessary to ensure that the development retained a walkway from the back parking apartment through to Vincent Street. The possibilities are complete the cinema on the gallery floor, alter the floor plan on the ground floor to allow for larger commercially viable retail outlets. We have been advised that the floor plan on the ground floor contains a number of smaller areas. Our advice is if the retail outlets on the ground floor were made bigger, we would attract higher rents. The front section fully developed could attract rents, including the cinema, of up to $200,000 per annum. That's the advice we've received. Capitalised at 3%, the value would be between $6 and $7 million. That is, if the front section was completed. Council could develop the site, financing it from the sale of the back section or reach an arrangement with a developer. We believe that it would be part of the discussions with the developer, if this were to happen, to retain the cinema. We believe that the cinema does have community and historic value, particularly as the facility could be used for other purposes such as presentations and meetings. Council may choose to simply sell the property as a whole. This could be a fireside sale. However, we believe with the development of the front section, we could maximise our values.
30 seconds.
We believe there are viable alternatives, and before proceeding with the sale, we urge Council to seek professional advice from property developers, commercial agents, etc. Finally, we would like to say that this is an important historical building and that the style and features of the front section should be maintained. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bay. That concludes our requests to address council tonight for that section. We now come to 9.3, petitions. No petitions have been received for tonight's meeting. We now come to item 10, statutory planning. Councillor Hewitt has declared a conflict of interest for this item. Thank you, Councillor Hewitt.
Yes.
Ten point one, PA 3333. Use and development of the land for group accommodation, 70 Camp Street, Daylesford. I'll pass to our Director of, Ms. Alison Blackett will be introducing this report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Madam Deputy Mayor and councillors. The purpose of this report is for council to confirm its position on planning application 3333. It's an application for use development of land for group accommodation and vegetation removal at the said address. The application seeks approval for the construction of 5 short-term dwellings on the site, otherwise known as group accommodation. Now, this application is for council because 19 objections were received, And also, council needs to confirm to the Victorian Civil and Administrative Appeals Tribunal its position on the merits of the proposal. Accordingly, as the application is currently before VCAT, council is not in a position to make a formal determination, but simply to advise VCAT on its position. Council officers have considered the application and determined that whilst the use of the land for group accommodation is considered to be acceptable, the application fails to adequately address the Hepburn Planning Scheme's planning policy framework, zoning and overlays that affect the land in relation to vehicular access, height, visual dominance, neighbourhood character, heritage and landscape significance. So following the relevant consideration of the relevant planning provisions, comments from referral authorities and grounds of objection, council officers recommend that a notice of refusal to grant a planning permit be recommended. So through you, Madam Deputy Mayor, the officer's recommendation is as read.
Thank you, Ms Blackett, for that report. We will now hear from those who have asked to speak to this planning application. So I'll now invite Mr Neil Hayden and Associates to speak in objection to this planning application. Welcome, Mr Hayden. You have 3 minutes to address council.
The Mayor, councillors and officers, I represent two landowners, Adam Kane and Sebastian. Mr Kane is an architect who does quite a bit of work in Dalesford and surround. Mr Hardwick is a builder. They own a property, Onslow, actually, site adjoining it to the west. From our point of view, or from my client's point of view, they concur with the officer's recommendation. It's a recommendation of the planning department, and that should be given weight, we say, by the councillors with respect to being a professional assessment of the application. We also agree that this application is contemporary architecture. It has been sort of considered these barrel type structures in a Buninyong case last year where VCAT refused the application. So they're similar type structures. They're quite tall. They're sort of in sort of the range of sort of 9 to 10 metres above ground. And the site, as councillors might know, is quite a prominent and high site anyway. So sort of the additional sort of building of the height of these structures does create a level of sort of prominence, which will undoubtedly be seen from many vantage points around Dalesford and surrounds. We say that also these structures are certainly out of character with sort of what the prevailing sort of neighbourhood character is in the area. So there's certainly something contemporary, and certainly my client architect is not against contemporary architecture, but my clients are really saying this application is just trying to be a little bit ambitious and really wouldn't produce what we would say in planning terms is an acceptable planning outcome for this site. The site's also in a heritage overlay area. It's called the Cornish Hill Mining Precinct, and certainly the application documents talk about these structures sort of being in harmony with that precinct. They sort of say that these structures sort of simulate with sort of the old poppet heads or the mining heads in that precinct. We say that's a little bit misguided in terms of trying to draw a comparison with previous mining structures and these contemporary designed buildings. Thank you. So on balance, we say that this application should be refused by the council, or the council is really forming a position of refusal. It's not a notice to refuse. It's actually, for VCAT purposes, it assists with council's representation at the VCAT hearing that council would refuse or its position is to refuse the application. So we recommend the recommendation to the councillors.
Thank you, Mr Hayden. Thank you. I now invite Miss Genevieve Lonan, sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly, to speak in objection to the application. Genevieve, are you here tonight? No, we may come back if you turn up. I now invite Miss Leanne Howard to speak in objection to the application. Thanks, Leanne. You have 3 minutes.
And it's Dr. Leanne Howard.
Sorry, Dr. Leanne Howard, sorry.
Good evening to our councillors and staff and my colleagues from the Daylesford Historical Society and Museum and residents. I appreciate the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Historical Society's objection to the proposed Sky Barrels development. The Historical Society's mission is to conserve the histories, heritages, landscapes and cultures of the district. So that's what finds us here tonight. We consider this proposal highly inappropriate given its proximity to and the severe detrimental impact it would have on the integrity of the history, heritage and social significance of the iconic Cornish Hill Mining Reserve. Our letter to council details the reasons why we take this view. However, I wish to highlight several broader points to frame our thinking. Firstly, it is important to remember that landscapes are documents of our social history and culture. Our stories and identities are embedded in the landscape. They can be read and interpreted. Landscapes help to tell more about our past, to understand who we are. The cultural landscape idea highlights the interrelationships between landscape and people, or nature and culture. People shape landscape and landscape shapes people. Landscapes, however, are not just relics of the past, they are dynamic lived-in places. Landscapes evolve and change, but we need to actively understand the historical significance and cultural heritage of the Cornish Hill Mining Reserve. We need to understand what it is we need to protect and not to lose our heritage unwittingly. Next, decisions set a precedent. If the Sky Barrels development were to go ahead, it has broader implications for our region. Project approval would send the disturbing message that inappropriate development takes precedence over conserving our history, heritage and landscape. This would be short-sighted and lead to longer-term loss. Finally, World Heritage listing for the Central Victorian Goldfields is a distinct possibility. Our councils are contributing to working towards this end. World Heritage listing is only given to places of outstanding universal value, meaning places of global heritage significance. They tell us part of our universal story. A World Heritage nomination brings immense social, cultural and economic opportunity. To this end, good decisions need to be made, and we need to see these decisions in that broader context.
30 seconds.
Over many years in my own research into the connections between people and landscape, I've seen that when communities, experts and government agency can listen to each other and work together respectfully, extraordinary things can happen. Collectively, we have a responsibility to past, present and future generations to protect our histories and heritages. And we don't want to lose any of it knowingly or unintentionally on our watch. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Howard. I now invite Mr. Victor Swed to speak in objection to the application. Thank you, Mr. Swed. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this application. My wife Anna and I have had a close association with Daylesford since 1995 and have lived here for more than 18 years. We believe that we will be impacted by this development if it proceeds. For 8 years, we've been members of Friends of Cornish Hill. We've also been members of the Dalesford Bushwalking Group for 14 years for myself and 18 years for Anna, and we regularly walk throughout Dalesford, Cornish Hill and surrounds. As qualified town planners, we have both assessed the application and consider it is inconsistent with the decision-making objectives of the planning scheme. I would like to highlight the following. The proposed buildings are inconsistent with the character and built form of the neighbourhood and would set an undesirable precedent. The buildings are excessively tall and would be visible from a number of surrounding locations and would be intrusive and an eyesore. They are clearly 3 stories high, not 2 stories as claimed by the application. The application also states that a preliminary view analysis only has been carried out, so it's incomplete. The proposal is inconsistent with the heritage features and values of both the neighbourhood and Cornish Hill, and we strongly support the views of the Heritage Advisor. The application states that a land capability assessment will be provided as the land is not connected to sewerage. Yet elsewhere in the application, it seems to say that they will connect to sewerage. It does not appear to properly address a critical issue such as this, as well as drainage collection and disposal on the site. Access is totally unsatisfactory and hazardous. Houston Street is effectively a bush track, and contrary to what the application states, there is not room for vehicles to safely pass one another, particularly on the 100 metres or so past Duke Street. There does not appear to be any information at all on how the applicant proposes to ensure safe and practical access to the site. The fire risks are significant, not only on the land, but in the surrounding area. You just need to go out and have a look, even now as winter approaches. No effort appears to have been made to control the fire risks or growth and spread of gorse, broom and other noxious weeds on the site. And we've been observing the site since December, and it seems to be getting worse rather than better. The application fails to provide adequate information on a number of issues and is inconsistent with the decision-making objectives of the planning scheme, and we request that council determine to oppose the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swed. I now invite Mr. Barry Ludlow to speak in objection to the application. Mr. Ludlow.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Been said, theme park architecture for Dalesford is not a proposition. I'm happy to hear the council are not supporting. So I'm happy with that. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Ludlow. Thank you for that statement. I now invite Mr. Mark Rack, who is attending virtually, to speak in objection to the motion.
Just dropped off.
Yes, Mr. White, sorry, we got Mr. Rack there.
He's just dropped off.
Has, all right. Give him a moment. Mr. White, do you need a little bit more time? Okay. What we might do is see if there are any questions for our planner, Ms. Alison Blackett, at this stage from councillors on this particular application. No questions from councillors?
Just try ringing.
We're just waiting to get through to Mr. Rack, who's coming in virtually.
Let's go back. How are you? It's Chris Whiting. Sorry, council. You dropped off the Zoom. Mark said everything has been said and we can continue without it.
Thank you, Mr. White. And thank you, Mr. Rack, for your informing us. So we now go to a recommendation that is before us. It's a lengthy recommendation. I can read it. Why?
No, not the officer's recommendation. It's as printed in the agenda.
The officer's recommendation is printed in the agenda, and the summary is to wanted to be clear what we're voting on. I'll just read.
Deputy Mayor, read part 2 of the officer's recommendation.
The recommendation is printed in the agenda, and the summary is that council, having caused notice of planning application PA 3333 to be given under section 52 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987, and having considered all the matters required under section 30 of the Act, that VCAT be advised that should council have been in a position to determine the application, the decision would have been to issue a notice of refusal to grant a planning permit at 70 Camp Street, Daylesford, in accordance with the following recommendations and grounds of refusal. And those details are in the agenda. Do I have a motion from councillors? Councillor Henderson.
So, Madam Deputy Mayor, I'm quite happy to move the officer's recommendation as listed in the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hood seconding. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Madam Deputy Mayor, this application is perhaps a little bit of a sign of the times. And we have a very unique landscape and history in our region, and has been said by one of the objectors about the World Heritage listing of the goldfields, which I've been intimately involved with now for over 10 years. And it is described by people from Cornwall who are world experts in World Heritage that this is one of the most, or is the most unique example of intact mining history in the world. Now, are we going to throw that out because someone wants to build some sky barrels? I think not. When we look at other fights that are going on in this area, we've got monstrosity towers planned in our farming land. There seems to be our landscape and our heritage is under threat all the time. So those towers actually threaten the heritage of the goldfields, and so does this application. We've put a lot of effort into this World Heritage listing, and many people have seen the benefits that will bring. When we're talking about tourists, and sky barrels might bring some tourists, a World Heritage listing will bring many, many millions of people over the years, not just a few each year. I think that the heritage of Cornish Hill and the areas around Daylesford are underrated. We hear about buried rivers of gold, we hear about the buried leads, but little is thought about the significance of the Daylesford area. And I think just from that aspect, it's very important that we do preserve that. And it's not just history for history's sake. It's a real history. It's history that must be remembered. And if we look at the use of that land, it's a very difficult site, and that's been described too. How do we get access to it? How do we put sewage or a water treatment plant there if it's not able to be sewered? It's a very difficult site. I commend the officers for the work they've done, I agree with them. I don't always agree with them, but I agree with them on this occasion. It's a very thorough job. And I commend them for it. And I hope that VCAT. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Henderson. Councillor Hood, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. In supporting this motion to refuse the application, I'll make similar remarks to councillor Henderson. As an organisation, council is serious about conserving our history and heritage. And I think that had we allowed this permit to go ahead, it would have been out of character and setting a bad precedent. The proposal as it stands is unsympathetic to the heritage value. It would be visually intrusive and dominating, and it's in entirely the wrong place. So I'm quite happy to support this motion.
Thank you, councillor Hood. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Anyone else like to speak for the motion? In that case, I would put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. I'd like to call a division. I'll put the vote again. Those in favour? Councillor Dryly, councillor Henderson, councillor Hood, councillor Simpson, councillor Bray in favour. All those against? That's carried unanimously.
Just get councillor Hewitt back in the room.
Just waiting for councillor Hewitt to return before we go on to the next item. I'd like to welcome councillor Hewitt back and to inform her that the officer's recommendation was carried unanimously. Item 10.2, we move on. Application for PA 3335, use and development of land at 153 Charlies Road, elevated plains. I will invite Ms. Alison Blackett to introduce the report.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor and councillors. This application seeks to use and develop up 153 Charlies Road, elevated plains as a glamping or camping and caravan park establishment. The site is located within the farming zone and is subject to the bushfire management overlay and environmental significance overlay. Councillors will remember that a previous planning application, PA 2703, was considered and refused by council in 2020. This decision was appealed at VCAT by the applicant, who determined that the refusal should be upheld. The basis for this decision directly related to bushfire risk, in particular the proposed use of in-ground bunkers was not supported as a shelter in place, a lack of a building for this purpose and no on-site manager. The tribunal, however, found that all other aspects of the application were generally compatible with the objectives of the farming zone. This application includes a draft bushfire emergency management plan prepared by a reputable company, Terra Matrix, and the Country Fire Authority did not object to the application subject to conditions, including the requirement for a bushfire management plan to be submitted and endorsed by the responsible authority. All concerns as raised by VCAT have been addressed in this application. A total of 24 objections have been received, raising concerns including risk to life, conflict with fire uses, inappropriate use of Charlies Road and amenity impacts. Accordingly, due to the fact that the applicant has generally responded to the VCAT findings, Council are recommending a notice of decision to grant a permit issued with conditions for the use and development of a camping and caravan park and one associated business identification sign. And through you, Deputy Mayor, the officer's recommendation is as read.
Thank you, Ms Blackett. Before we go on, are there any questions from councillors to Ms Blackett?
Yes,
Councillor Henderson.
yes, through you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Ms Blackett, does this mean, just to get my head around this, does this mean that throughout our shire where we've got a farm, that someone could make a very successful application to turn it into a caravan park and glamping and camping site? So we'll go down to some potato country in Newland. Is that really the intent of the Planning and Environment Act, to allow caravan parks to proliferate? We've got an ecotourism shire, and we're setting a precedent here where we're allowing it in farm zone. May be allowable, but do we allow the next one at Blampede, at Dean or at Newland? What do we say about that when our council plan is that we must protect valuable farmland?
Through you, Madam Deputy Mayor, and councillors, my response is that a caravan park and this type of accommodation is a Section 2 use in the farming zone. So an application for a caravan park is based on the merits of the proposal, and the application has been assessed twice now. First time it went to VCAT and it was the refusal was upheld by VCAT in relation to bushfire risk. And it's considered those matters have been adequately responded to, and that the objectives of the farm zone in that regard have been met. And there are a lot of examples across Victoria where caravan parks do appear in a farm zone.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions from councillors for Ms Blackett? Sorry, councillor Dryly, I wasn't sure if that was you putting your hand up. No? Okay. In that case, I'll go now to our public participation and addressing council. And those who wish to speak to this planning application. I now invite Ms Louise Cass to speak in objection to the application. Welcome, Ms Cass. You have 3 minutes to address council.
Thank you very much. Approximately 50 residents will be negatively affected by allowing this glamping facility. We are a close-knit community living in a rural lifestyle in a farming zone. Knowing that this zone is protected from non-agricultural use. We live on the land that has a natural scenic beauty. Each property offers its unique characteristics in an area of cultural significance, near an extinct volcano revered by Indigenous people and by us. Many of us are trying to achieve peace and quiet in an alternative lifestyle free of traffic and pollution, growing our own food, creating orchards, olive groves, raising small flocks of farm animals such as chickens, alpacas, sheep and pigs. Some of us are striving for self-sufficiency. Some of us are rehabilitating the land by planting trees. We've built houses to a high standard of bushfire resilience, according to all the rules, in order to stay safe. This application will abolish this simple lifestyle. It makes no contribution to farming activities and in fact could limit the operation of existing small-scale farming. It brings more than 4 times the traffic into the end of an unsealed, steeply crested, dead-ended road, contributing to an increased risk of accidents, noise and dust. Its density is rarely, if ever, seen in this zone. There will be many of us who live in fear of bushfires caused by unsupervised glampers. It brings the possibility of polluting the protected waterways, and it avoids the building regulations, providing unsafe dwellings for its patrons. It threatens the protections of agricultural land by claiming that the structures are temporary and the land can be reinstated for farming at any time, when in fact hundreds of metres of below-ground sewerage pipes and infrastructure, including several large tanks, will be dug into the hillside, and most of the buildings and their supportive platforms are not transportable. It brings no benefit to any of us. It only brings disbenefits. In weighing conflicting policies, my understanding is the decision needs to be based on whether proposals produces a net community benefit, and it doesn't. There are at least 13 clauses in the planning scheme, including the new municipal planning strategy, that pronounce the development inconsistent with its visions, objectives, strategies, and decision guidelines. It is only consistent with one, and that is tourism. Please note to reject this application because removing more than 50 people's reasons for living here. It is not an acceptable outcome, and on balance, the application's disbenefits to the local community outweigh its benefits of providing possible employment to a couple of part-time staff. Our home is our castle. It is our shelter, our solace. Together as a community, we unite for what is the protection of our land.
Thank you, Ms Cass. And I now invite Mr Paul Carney to speak in objection to the application. Welcome, Mr Carney. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you for the opportunity. The point of objection I would like to address is the unsuitability of the proposed development, with its only access being on Charlies Road. This is an issue of safety in times of regular usage and of potential disaster in an emergency. These risks are to the resident users of Charlies Road and to guests entering and exiting the proposed development. I contend that the dangerous conditions of Charlies Road have not been properly addressed in the developer's application for 5 reasons. 1, the road is unsealed, tree-lined and exceptionally steep gradients. Residents are cognizant of the need to be attentive on 3 blind crests for any oncoming vehicles that will only be visible at the summit. Unfamiliar visitors to and from the glamping site would have no such preparedness. 2, upon exiting Charlies Road, any visitor turning right at the T intersection into Hepburn Euston Road, perhaps en route to Lavangela for a coffee, would have a few seconds to react to traffic cresting the hill from the Hepburn direction. People who live there habitually turn onto the right side of the road to avoid a possible collision. This is in violation or conflict with clause 3.2 of Austroad's Guide to Road Design, Part 4A, which calls for a clearance of at least 123 metres in a 60km/h zone. And at this point, there is only 70 metres. Point 3, Charlies Road is only graded once annually and its already narrow carriageway is more narrowed as conditions deteriorates seasonally. The proposed glamping development would occasion a much increased volume of traffic, with visitors and service vehicles further degrading the already limited carriageway and disallowing for safe passing space. The road would inevitably need more upgrades, and this would be a cost incumbent to council. Point 4, the situation magnifies from one of frustration to outright danger in the case of an emergency vehicle that cannot simply manoeuvre around fleeing vehicles. Should this tree-lined road lose visibility through smoke, as it has, or become blocked by falling trees, there is no other exit, no passing space and no turning space. Final point. Further to this are the gradients of Charlies Road, 20 degrees and up to 23.41 degrees. in one place. These are non-compliant with CFA vehicles under clause 53.02 of bushfire planning. In summary, the risks associated with the glamping site at the end of Charlie's Road are simply too great. This is not a regular rural road with a few undulations. This is a dead-end road with exceptional gradients and inherent safety elements that no amount of additional signage or passing bays would ever ameliorate. And as such, the development of this glamping site would be an entirely irresponsible act to this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Carney. I now invite Mr John Stockfeld to speak in objection to this application. Welcome, Mr Stockfeld. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor and councillors. The question I want to address is whether there can be room for doubt in a decision where there is so much at stake. Ultimately, there are lives at stake. It seems to me there remains some confusion around the shelter in place bill and its use. Coming up the tribunal's decision on the previous application, the planning officer's report says the proposed use of in-ground bunkers was not supported as the shelter in place, lack of a building for this purpose, and no on-site manager. At this point, I beg to differ. In fact, the tribunal's decision acknowledges that the building is not for this purpose. Its purpose is marshalling, not sheltering. That difference is acknowledged in the tribunal's summary of the reasons for its decision, where the absence of a building that can serve as a marshalling post is noted. It was council's bushfire expert who brought marshalling into the conversation during the VCAT hearing. The point of marshalling is to ensure fire shelters are entered at the correct time, because without it, there is the risk of compromising the breathable air within. It's noted in the decision that the experts acknowledged that entry and exit bunker was required to be well timed. Timing is critical. The difference between marshalling and sheltering is critical. For the current application, the planning officer's report says the use of a single building will ensure all abilities can be marshalled to this point in the event of an emergency. I think two questions are prompted here. Firstly, are the clients still required to marshal in the open air, therefore potentially in an ember shower? All experts agreed during the hearing this was not a viable option. Secondly, is the proposal really catering for all abilities? Which abilities is this referring to? Restrictions on ability can be other than physical. Even if we consider only physical ability, not mental preparedness, mobility issues could still result in tragedy. The scattered layout of the accommodation units across the site entails for some a long uphill trek to the fire shelter, far in excess of the regulated maximum distance. There is a lot at stake here. An entire community that has invested in a quiet bush location stands to have its rural amenity destroyed. And no one here wants to see a tragedy at the end of that road. Ultimately, the question is whether the concerns of the tribunal have genuinely been addressed in this new proposal. I don't believe they have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr Stockfeld. I now invite Ken Mansell to speak in objection to the application. Welcome, Ken. You have 3 minutes to address council.
Deputy Mayor, and thanks councillors for the opportunity. The elevated plains Mount Franklin region is a fire-prone region. In the era of climate change, the Anthropocene, fire is more likely here, not less. What happened in February 2019 could happen again. There are two ways fire can start. from the action of humans or the action of nature. It can also come from two directions. Did you notice the CFA conditional report only talks about one direction? What we in Powell's Lane fear most is a fire coming at us from the south, picking up speed in the dry forest of the Hepburn State Park and racing towards us. No fire truck will ever venture down one-way Powell's Lane. How could such a fire start? On the subject site, only 1 kilometre away as the Kookaburra flies. Let's just imagine this scenario. Enticed by visions of Woodstock, loaded with flagons of wine, I can't wait to get wasted, said one Facebook fan. Inexperienced visitors to 153 Charlie's Road on a cool January or February night start a little campfire. It happens regularly on Mount Franklin. A puff of wind, it takes off. Oh, sorry, Powell's Lane, we should have been more careful. All this on a poorly supervised site. The fire warden will only be present when the fire rating is very high. Fire can start here any time from December to April. What we in Powell's Lane also fear is a fire attacking the subject site from the north, starting from a lightning strike as in 2019, or from the forest, and threatening the residents, Charlie's Road, Mannings Road, Hepburn, and the guests. Not every one of the 26 guests is going to make the 200 metres to the sheltering place, feeling their way through the smoke and heat. Some will panic, hop in their cars and drive helter-skelter down the most dangerous road in the municipality. You've all seen the narrow, winding gravel road with the ridiculously steep blind crests, narrowly missing or crashing into whatever fire vehicle was travelling in the opposite direction from the Hepburn Road. A fire truck foolhardy enough to find itself in a one-way road with a limited turning circle. This is a tragedy waiting to happen. Council in its wisdom rejected the original application in 2020. VCAT refused it because of the risk to human life. The repeat application, PA 3335, as Dr. Stockfeld has just said, is essentially no different. If the in-ground bunkers are replaced with an above-ground structure and then this is required to be certified as a fire shelter rather than simply being built to a Bell rating, what's changed? Nothing's changed. State law and our own planning scheme are unequivocal. The preservation of human life is paramount. The application offends against this principle and it offers no net community gain for the wider region. The Elevated Plains Mount Franklin community is united in its opposition, not because it's NIMBYist, but because it is responsible, community-minded and convinced by its own research that the Shire's planning scheme cannot allow this application to proceed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr Mansell. I'd now invite Mr Scott McLean to speak in objection to the application. Mr McLean, are you here tonight? Oh, not here. In that case, I'll move on to Mr Jeremy Whitehead to speak in objection to the application. Mr Whitehead, for 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you my objection to this application. Let's not be misled. You're being asked to permit 11 permanent, non-Bell rated accommodations in farming zone within a bushfire overlay. It's against state law to limit the duration of stays in a caravan park. Therefore, these 11 accommodations could effectively become permanent residences. As people's representatives, you have a greater purview than the planning office and the opportunity to consider all community impacts, irrespective of adherence to planning scheme clauses. I have 4 main points of objection. First, the applicant is using a feature of the planning scheme that allows for removable structures in caravan parks to overcome the prohibition for accommodations in farming zone. However, even the planning officer recognises them as permanent structures on page 236 of your agenda. These domes and yurts are not tents that can be easily relocated or removed, and the 4 actual caravans are to be permanently installed on 3-metre high platforms with complex steel supports and decking, none of which can be easily removed. Those unsightly, highly visible bubbles, 10 metres in diameter, 5 metres high, will be scattered across the landscape, clearly visible from Mannings Road. They are not low impact and certainly not temporary, nor easily removed. Secondly, The application even acknowledges the negative visual impact. Quote, the Airstream caravans have been revised to ensure the external material is of low reflectivity to ensure no undue visual amenity impacts. Alas, Airstream is proud of their highly reflective polished silver cladding and do not offer alternatives. Their nickname is the Silver Bullet. Third, neither the application nor the planning officer's report specifies what building class the quote minimum BAL 29 rated SIPB shelter is. Doesn't it require a separate application to satisfy the planning scheme? Please note that bushfire shelters are a class 10C building and are not exempt if they're greater than 30 metres squared. Finally, the proposed accommodation density is not compatible with the surrounding farming zone use. The application uses a misleading statement consistent with the surrounding tourism accommodation. However, these unclassified accommodations, allowing 26 persons to reside in 4 hectares, is 50 times greater density than the surrounding community. The 14 neighbouring dwellings are within roughly 240 hectares, whereas this permit would have 3 accommodations per hectare, which if applied to this area would be 720 accommodations. Clearly not a rural intensity and certainly not compliant with farming zone. Please do not grant a permit for this inappropriate development, notwithstanding the planning officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whitehead. I now invite Ms. Carolyn Whitehead to speak in objection to the planning application. Carolyn, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. This is a repeat application that does not change the risk of people dying in a bushfire. During the VCAT case for the previous application, after exhaustively examining all the proposed alternative measures and numerous tables and clauses in the bushfire management overlay to get compliance, the barrister representing council asked a question regarding the accommodations. He asked, it flies in the face of the objectives to prioritize human life above all other considerations, doesn't it? To which the applicant's own fire expert offered the opinion, yes, it appears to be a square peg in a round hole. This repeat application has done nothing to alleviate this problem. The fact remains that people will be sleeping in the unprotected structures within a high-risk location. Furthermore, the Residential Tenancies Act, Clause 518 states, a planning scheme or permit cannot limit the duration of residency in a caravan park. And VCAT has upheld this regulation in several of its decisions. Therefore, to grant a permit, council would be giving permission for at least 26 permanent residents in 11 unsafe accommodations. The 3 key points I believe you must consider are: council cannot restrict permanent residencies in caravan parks. In relation to bushfire safety, the applicant's own fire expert referred to the accommodation's lack of BAL ratings as being a square peg in a round hole, and the application before you does not solve these bushfire dangers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Whitehead. I now ask Ms. Deborah Roeber to speak in objection to the application. Welcome, Ms. Roeber. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. In November 2019, the Victorian State Government launched a confronting bushfire ad campaign called How Well Do You Know Fire? Its aim was to help to educate Victorians on how to plan and prepare for the fire season. We live in Powers Lane, Mount Franklin, north of the Hepburn Regional Park from the proposed Woodstock glamping. The regional park extends across to the Midland Highway dry diggings and surrounds us on all sides except to the north. In January 1985, a fire started at the property next door to us. The visitors knew very little of fire and the volatility of wind on a gas flame, and the resulting fire spread rapidly and immediately, threatening properties in Mount Franklin and dry diggings. It drew tankers and firefighters from all over the Shire. If the fire made it into the Hepburn Regional Park, then elevated plains, Hepburn and Daylesford too would be threatened. It was a mad race by all to stop it. We didn't know anything about fire. We had just moved to our property. The Franklin Ford fire truck reached our neighbour's property soon after the alarm had been raised. The firefighters knew about fire, but didn't know there was no turnaround for their truck on a single-lane dirt road. They were caught in the fire front with nowhere to go. The flames rolled over the truck with the firefighters sheltering beneath. It was terrifying, and that night I learned a lot about fire. In January 1989, a fire started at our other neighbours. This time we knew more about fire, had a sprinkler system on our roof, pumps and fire hoses, and we were CFA volunteers. The Hepburn Regional Park is only 20 metres to the east of us. The fire had to be contained as soon as possible. After two major fires, you'd think we'd know a lot more about fire, and we do. But what I don't know is how to stop the incredible anxiety, fear and dread when it's a bad day. My heart races, I feel nauseous, and I have a tight chest, all symptoms of anxiety from these first two fires. In 2016, our neighbours decided to do a final burn-off 2 days before the fire restrictions came in. The ground was tinder dry from the lack of rain. I panicked when I saw the flames down in the gully at dusk. Our neighbours knew a bit about fire, but not enough. It was too dry, too dangerous to burn off. Members of the local CFA visited them the following day to explain that even though legally they could burn off, the advice is always to check your local conditions before starting a burn. This was evident this Easter with several burn-offs getting out of control in the Hepburn Shire. In summer and even spring these days, the ground is so dry as we are situated at the northern end of Central Region, less than 20 kilometres from the North Central Region border, a much drier region. We've had 37 years to learn about fire, but what will the guests know about fire? What can they possibly understand from one information session with the fire warden? And finally, I would ask councillors with respect, how well do you know fire? If ever the guests are trapped and cannot evacuate in time, or a fire starts at the campground and as a result residents lose their homes, their livestock and perhaps even their lives, will you say, we didn't really know enough about fire, we shouldn't have approved this application, but then it would be too late.
Thank you, Ms. Rober. I'll now invite Ms. Linda Hancock to speak in objection to the application. Ms. Hancock, you have 3 minutes.
Madam Deputy Mayor and councillors, thank you for the opportunity of speaking to oppose this resubmission of an application that, as you know, was rejected at VCAT. I'm a resident in Mannings Road, and now tonight you've heard from residents in 3 separate roads separated by quite long distances. This means this isn't just an application about a few neighbours saying they don't like something next door. It's actually us on Mannings Road, Charlie's Lane and Powell's Lane. And if a fire comes from the north, it has the potential to be sucked down a gully and to engulf Hepburn. And that's what was threatened in 2019. I've had 2 fires on our boundary and it's way too close. So I want to address the structures and that are in this proposal and whether they constitute buildings or not. The applicant says the structures are temporary, but the council officers refer to them as permanent. We have concrete foundations, decks, floors, plumbing, wiring, sewerage, potbelly wooden heaters. Therefore, why are they not subject to the BEL 29 rated building requirements under the National Construction Code? So in other words, if you say yes on planning grounds, and this is a technical issue of what the scheme says and what the applicant submitted, then will you not face a problem when it comes to the building permit and certificate? Because these structures are not in accord with the BEL 29 rated material. The materials have been upgraded in the BEL rating system after the Bushfire Royal Commission. So why are we building houses subject to this building code and this application isn't? The structures are not immediately dismountable and transportable, as you've heard. Now, caravan parks may suit some areas of Hepburn Shire, but not this one, ringed on three sides by extensive forest. Fire threat we live with, as you've heard, but the Bushfire Royal Commission found that seasonal tourist populations make evacuations more challenging. Visitors, they say, quote, visitors are unfamiliar with local conditions and locations, limiting their awareness of the need to act, what to do and where to go. And the Commission identified a single road for an evacuation route as, quote, especially problematic. So we're dealing with conditions and with climate change and with increased frequency and intensity of disasters. Now, as you would probably be aware, the AS 3959 Bell bushfire attack level and the Forest Fire Danger Index, FFDI, are undergoing constant revision in relation to the changed conditions that we're needing to deal with in terms of climate change. So this farm zone caravan park application points to the fact that I suggest council decisions need to be future looking for the life of the structure. And the loophole here appears to be one where tourist accommodation is coming in under a caravan park. So for us in the surrounding community, we are threatened by this application with an acute loss of amenity, the noise, the visibility, the busyness, the traffic, the people not used to gravel roads, etc.
10 seconds.
And what we have created, we feel is being exploited for profit. Just in concluding, I'd like to ask, would council approve 13 two-person cabins on this site? Probably not. It's extremely intense. And that was pointed out by Jeremy in his calculation of the density of population.
Thank you, Ms. Hanks.
So thank you very much for the opportunity to present.
Thank you, Ms. Hancock, for presenting to council. I now invite Mr. Tino Girali, who is attending virtually. Mr. Smith, Mr. White, do we have Mr. Girali online?
No, we don't. Oh, yes, he's joining the meeting.
Yes. Good evening. Mr. Tino Girali, welcome to council tonight. You are speaking in objection to the Charlie's Road application.
Yes, I am.
You have 3 minutes.
Madam Deputy Mayor, Mr Mayor, councillors, our property historically known in the area as Manning Farm abuts up against the applicants and overlooks the proposed development. I've read the planning scheme. I understand it to be a set of ordinances that you as councillors are obliged to uphold. I understand that there are conflicting priorities and goals contained within it. However, what is clear is that its goals are to facilitate the proper execution of the purposes of each of the zones. There seems to be differences of opinion on whether this application fulfills the goals of the planning scheme. For example, the applicant states that the proposal fits and fulfills the planning scheme clauses nicely, and yet this council ruled more than a year ago that it did not, stating in its refusal to grant a permit that it was inconsistent with 11 clauses, the very same clauses that the applicant claims are consistent with this application. The applicant's grounds for appeal to VCAT was that it disagreed with each point the council made in its rulings in July 2020. So if there are such huge differences in the interpretation of the scheme and associated legislation, then maybe it's time we get back to basics. I understand that there are 23 objections and no support for these applications. Each of the objectors will be personally affected in a negative way if the application goes forward. The objectors represent at least 50 people who reside or utilise the area. Negative impacts include risk and threat to human life by potential of a catastrophic fire in the area lit by one of the glampers. This is of particular interest to our house as it is to the south of the development and up the hill. The impact of the use of Charlie's Road by in excess of more than 10,000 additional trips per year up and down the entire length, a road whose quality is already questionable with the current load it must sustain. The impact of dumping approximately 100 million litres of effluent into the paddock near an unregistered bore and important waterways. The impact of the vistas and ridgelines, which should be preserved for everyone rather than being ruined by scattering 12 buildings across 4 hectares of paddock. The impact of noise and pollution from energy-intensive reverse cycle air conditioners in 11 accommodations, which will be flat out both in winter and summer, significantly increasing the background noise levels for the entire area, which can never be remedied. The impact of light pollution from pathways, the shelter-in-place building, the communal deck, the car park lighting and headlights, again, significantly changing forever the panorama and the area for our foreseeable future. For me, the question is, on balance, does council want to support a single applicant's application to put permanent structures, not temporary, and a commercial operation in a farm zone when nothing about the business will support farming activity? A proposal that wants to take advantage of the scenic beauty of the area for a few, but by doing so actually destroys the very thing that attracted many to the area. A proposal that destroys the calmness of the area. A proposal that sets a very dangerous precedence and other detrimental changes to this area. And does it want to support an application that puts at risk the lives of not only its patrons, but also its neighbours and their property?
30 seconds.
I sincerely hope that your decision is balanced and takes into account what is best for the majority of those affected and not driven by this development to exploit this very special parcel of land. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Girali, for joining us this evening. I will now invite Mark Considine, who is attending virtually, to speak in objection to the application. Do we have Mr. Considine?
Entering the room now.
Hello, Mark Considine. Welcome tonight to tonight's council meeting. I believe you are speaking in objection to the application to Charlie's Road. You have 3 minutes.
That is correct. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you, and you have 3 minutes to address council.
Thank you, and thanks very much to the council for allowing time. I want to make just 3 points very quickly because I know we're pressed. The first one is just first of all to preview this by saying I live next door and we have a productive commercial olive grove. We've been growing olives and making olive oil there for more than 20 years. My first concern is the erosion of the rural zone, which I think will not only hurt producers like myself, but others as well. Encroachment of tourist developments has a lot of side effects that you'd be aware of. It drives up the price of land, makes it harder for small holding agriculture to succeed. And the rural zone, I know, can cope with some low impact tourism like camping, but what's being proposed is much larger than that. And so my first point is not much point having a policy commitment to the rural zone if we don't defend it application by application. My second point is that I hope council takes the view that we don't want to create conflicting activities, one beside the other. The olive oil processes that we use are not compatible with a large tourist development right next door. We operate noisy machinery at all hours of the day and sometimes at night during pruning, harvesting, spraying, chipping. We spray insecticides and other products. We have a feral animal problem, so we regularly have shooting both during the day, but particularly at night. And in the past, we've often used gun scarers to keep birds off our crops. These are all normal things in a horticultural environment. They're not normal things for tourists to face across a fence. With the best will in the world, those conflicting activities will lead to disharmony, and we ask you to consider that. My final point is that I know the block in question very well. Obviously, I've lived across a fence from it for more than 20 years. I've known the previous owners well. The VCAT assumption that this was poor quality land is totally incorrect. This is the sort of block of land that would produce alpacas, honey, olives, berries, even vines. It's not a good use of the land to take it out of production or take it away from users who might produce that. That's where all of the products that go to our local markets and attract tourists come from. And I hope you think about that when you're making your decisions. Thank you again for making the time, and we look forward to the decision.
Thank you, Mr. Considine. I'll just ask councillors coming out of the public participation time whether there are any further questions for our planning officer, Ms. Blackett. No further questions? Councillors, we have an officer's recommendation before us in the agenda. The summary of that is to make a determination to issue a notice of decision to grant a permit for the use and development of camping and caravan park and display of a business identification sign at 153 Charlies Road, Elevated Plains, subject to the conditions outlined in the meeting agenda. I'm in search of a motion. Councillor Hewitt.
Yes, Madam Deputy Mayor, I would like to move a motion, but not the officer's recommendation. I would like...
Hewitt, do you have the motion?
I do have a copy of the motion, if it could go up.
1 second. Councillor Hewitt, if you'd like to start reading your motion.
Yes, I would like to move that council, having caused notice of planning application under section 32 of the Environment Act 1987, the Act, to be given, and having considered all the matters required under section 60 of the Act, decides to issue a refusal to grant a planning permit, PA 3335, for the use and development of a camping and caravan park and display of a business identification sign in respect of the land known as 153 Charlies Road, Elevated Plains, on the following grounds. There are 6 grounds that I have, but I'll read them out because it's difficult to see them. 1, the proposal is inconsistent with clause 14.01 to 11 of the Hepburn Planning Scheme, Protection of Agricultural Land, as the proposal does not minimise the adverse impact that an accommodation use will have on the productivity and operation of agricultural land. 2, the proposal will fragment an existing productive rural area and is therefore inconsistent with the purpose and decision guidelines of the farming zone at clause 35.07 of the Hepburn Planning Scheme. 3, the proposal is inconsistent with clause 13.02 to 15, the bushfire planning and the purpose and decision guidelines of clause 44.06, bushfire management overlay of the Hepburn Planning Scheme, as it has not been adequately demonstrated that the proposal and bushfire response would not pose an unacceptable risk to human life. 4, the proposal is inconsistent with the decision guidelines at clause 65.01 of the Hepburn Planning Scheme and does not result in the orderly planning of the area, nor does it respond to the degree of fire hazard associated with the location of the land and the proposed use. 5, existing access arrangements to the site are inappropriate to cater for an increase in vehicular traffic and types of vehicles accessing the site, including fire trucks. And 6, the proposal is inconsistent with the decision guidelines of clause 65 of the Hepburn Planning Scheme and results in a poor planning outcome for the area.
Thank you, Councillor Hewitt. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Henderson. Councillor Hewitt, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I would, Madam Deputy Mayor. Thank you. First, I think we have in our council plan and our council planning scheme, we note the importance of protecting agricultural land. We know that We're supporting and funding a small scale artisan agriculture, agriculture. And it's important that we consistently protect agricultural land. The VCAT, the previous VCAT judgment does say that it's not valuable farming land, not suitable for cropping or grazing. That may be, but we've heard from Mark Considine that there are many other uses, agricultural uses that could support small scale farming. And that is very consistent with both our council plan that came from the community and also our council planning scheme. Secondly, I'm concerned that there remains a risk to life from the bushfire, risk of bushfire. The proposal has attempted to address what was a shortcoming in the previous proposal, but there are many aspects of it that remain unconvincing. And it's not just about the people who will be visiting or camping at the site. It's also our responsibility to protect and reduce the risk of bushfire to the residents who live around that area. The proposal here addresses it to some degree, but perhaps not entirely, the risk to people who might be camping there, but it pays no attention to those people who live around the area. And that is also human life that needs to be protected. And finally, we've heard from Paul Carney about the inappropriateness of Charlie's Road. It's a one-way road. There's only one entry and exit. Anyone who's driven along it, as I know many councillors and officers have in the previous, while considering this application, will know that it's a dangerous road, that it's narrow, that there's not verges, that there's blind crests, that it's very steep. It is inappropriate. And we have a report provided by the objectors that examines the traffic management scheme. So I'm concerned that the proposal as it stands does not address the issues of the road. So that's why I would urge my fellow councillors to support my motion.
Thank you, Councillor Hewitt. Councillor Henderson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Well, what can I say? I think you might have heard this somewhere before, but just because we can doesn't mean we should. And I think that this application is one where we can point, and the motion points to the very things that I hold fairly dear, and that is the protection of our agricultural land. And I think my fellow councillors have heard me speak on this issue many times. I might have been outnumbered on some occasions, but I still think that we need very much to support our farmers and their ongoing capability. And we've seen tonight that this land is quite valuable. It doesn't just have to raise prime beef cattle or fat lambs, produce wheat or barley. The best that this land with all their yurts could produce perhaps are some yaks. But we're not going to see any yaks out there. We're going to see people who are inexperienced in the country. Fire Royal Commission would tell you that people that come as visitors don't always come with a knowledge that the people who live in the area do. I live in a very fire-prone area and I've been brought up with fire. I still fear it greatly. There's nothing like seeing a bushfire coming, and be that a mile away, or be it a kilometre away, or coming right up to the edge of a property. It's not a very good feeling. And also here we've got to consider our emergency services. We're talking about the residents. What about the people who've got to sit in an ambulance or a fire truck to go down a road through smoke, as has been described, perhaps through fire, and not have a way out? They know that if they go in there, they risk themselves. They know if they don't go in there, someone may lose their life. I don't think that I could live with myself if I gave this permit to go ahead only to sadly read in the year or a year's two's time, or even sometime in the future, that someone has lost their life because of my decision. And it's not a small thing. This is not a small risk. This is a big risk. And I can't, in all conscience, much as I like our planners and as much as I respect their professional thing, I'm not a professional planner, but I believe I'm a professional community person. And I took an oath to look out for community, look after that community. And I believe that it is not a good planning decision to put our community and even the visitors to our area at risk. So I support my colleague, Councillor Hewitt, and I commend the resolution to our councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Are there any councillors wishing to speak against the motion? Are there any other councillors wishing to speak in favour of the motion? Councillor Tim Dryley.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I too would like to support this alternate motion, and I would like to emphasise the remarks from the other councillors and support those, and also to support the objectors who have spoken tonight on a number of issues that they've brought up and so eloquently spoken about, and also the range of objections that we've read in outside the chambers on this matter. I'd also like to acknowledge the effort our officers have gone to present this recommendation, and to understand that there has been a lot of processes gone before this decision tonight in terms of the VCAT hearing and the expert witnesses involved, and that we are somewhat constrained by the decision that we are making tonight on fairly specific grounds, given the history of this application. But I too think that this would not present a good outcome for our community to support the officer's recommendation tonight. This alternate motion presents 6 points that I think are worthy of supporting. And in particular, I'd like to make reference to the Hepburn Planning Scheme Clause 13.021S, which is the bushfire planning that prioritised the protection of human life over all other policy considerations. The designs submitted in the application for the shelter-in-place building are not detailed enough for me to have confidence that they'll be acceptable, as it was mentioned in the VCAT hearing relating to this application. Both the CFA and Council's bushfire experts stated that more detail in the design of the shelter-in-place building is required at the planning stage, as greater certainty is required, as this is too important a part of the bushfire risk minimisation strategy to be addressed at a secondary consent stage. I too, like Councillor Hewitt has also mentioned, have concerns about the visitors to the site, and the objectors have also mentioned in terms of the safety for the community and for the visitors themselves, in terms of the lack of understanding of the risk of bushfire, and also the risk for the spread of bushfire to surrounding communities. I'd also like to make mention of the traffic engineering assessment, which Councillor Hewitt has also mentioned, in terms of the safety of or lack of safety of the road. There's a number of issues highlighted, several risks involved with Charlie's Road, but one I'd like to focus on is that Charlie's Road does not meet the requirements for CFA access for gradient requirements and passing bays along the road, which makes access for fire trucks inadequate. According to the traffic engineering assessment presented at VCAT, the traffic impacts of the development are not acceptable unless suitable road upgrades are undertaken along Charlie's Road to address the impacts of the development, traffic, and improve its safety and operation. This is particularly in light of the new non-local users that will use the accommodation facilities proposed and increased incidents of vehicle conflict along the road. I'd also like to make mention of the point in the first point in the alternate recommendation, that points to agricultural use, and to also support objectors' comments that that perhaps this land isn't as poor value as it has been previously stated at the VCAT, and that smallholder farming operations and the existing use around that area for those sorts of pursuits should be considered and given weight, and the potential for that to be an ongoing concern on this site, I think needs to be considered. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. That's what I had to say on this matter.
Thank you, Councillor Dryly. Would any other councillor like to speak for or against the motion? For the motion. Thank you, Councillor Hood.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The two big issues for me in supporting Councillor Hewitt's motion to refuse the permit, the two matters relating to human safety, being the road access issue and the fire risk issue. As Councillor Henderson said, I would not at all be comfortable if a permit were issued and I couldn't support taking what would be an avoidable and unnecessary risk to human life. I don't believe that the fire risk issue or the road access issue, either of them have been satisfactorily addressed. I'm also concerned with the agricultural land use factor. And finally, while agreeing with my colleagues, I would also commend the objectors for the very rational and logical and persuasive way in which they've put forward their case. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hood. If no other councillor wishes to speak for or against the motion, we have a motion put forward by Councillor Hewitt, and I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. All those against? Yep, I declare that that motion is carried unanimously. I'd like to call a division. Calling the division, I ask that all those in favour raise their hands. Councillor Henderson, Councillor Hewitt, Councillor Hood, Councillor Simpson, Councillor Bray and Councillor Dryly. That is carried unanimously. Thank you. I'd like to thank all objectors and participants tonight who presented to council. Thank you very much for your presentations this evening. We'll now move on to item 11. Resilient and sustainable environment. 11.1 Solar Savers. 2021-2022, a declaration of a special rate scheme, which is presented tonight by Councillor Henderson, who is going to introduce the report.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Madam Deputy Mayor, this particular item.
Might just wait till we clear the room. Thank you for coming tonight, and thanks again to our officers.
All right, Madam Deputy Mayor, this item is to outline our making solar power more accessible to low-income households through the Solar Savers program. It's among the first programs in Australia enabling households to install solar photovoltaic systems and pay them off through a special charge scheme over 8 years. This project was specifically aimed at pensioner households who are more vulnerable to increasing energy costs. This report recommends to Council to declare a special charge scheme under Section 163 of the Local Government Act 1989, purposes of defraying expenses relating to the provision of solar energy systems on residential properties participating in the Solar Savers scheme. Council included $125,000 in funding for the 2021-22 budget. The total cost of the works is calculated at $43,595.29 GST exclusive, of which property owners will contribute the entirety over an 8-year period. so which is a payback period. On the 15th of March 2022, Council resolved to advise intention to declare a special charge, to publish a public notice and to request the hearing submissions under section 223 of the Act. Council did publish a public notice placed on the 19th of March 2022, issued in the Courier newspaper. Public notice advised the proposed declaration of invited submissions under section 223 of the Act by 5 p.m. on the 29th of April 2022. The outcomes are outlined below. No submissions or objections received and no households made any requests to withdraw. So councillors have a recommendation before us.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson, for presenting that report. We have a recommendation that Council, having considered all submissions received and taken account of all objections lodged and compiled with the requirements of section 16, the 163A, 163B and 223 of the Local Government Act 1989, and otherwise according to law, hereby declare a special charge under section 163 of the Act as followed. The details of that are listed in the printed agenda. Councillors, I have a recommendation before us. I'm in search of a motion. Do I have a mover? Councillor Hewitt, what is your motion?
I'll move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Hood, seconding the motion. Do you wish to speak to the motion?
Only to say that I recommend this motion to my fellow councillors. It's an excellent scheme to which addresses many of our council plans in supporting renewable energy, and it provides an opportunity for those who are not able to outlay the financial cost of solar power by giving them the opportunity to pay it back over a number of years and at no cost to council. So I hope you support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Hewitt. Councillor Hood, do you wish to speak to the motion? Anyone wish to speak against the motion? Anyone else wish to speak for the motion? I'll put the motion. Oh, sorry, Councillor Dryly, you wish to speak for the motion?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just briefly, I'd just like to support of this motion and just to acknowledge the great position that the Hepburn Shire is in terms of its solar uptake. We're well ahead of the state average and ahead of our goals in terms of reaching our emissions targets. And that's partly due to programs like Solar Savers being on offer to people in need, vulnerable people who may not in regular circumstances be able to afford this sort of technology.
Thank you, Councillor Dryly. We have a motion on the table. I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. We move on to item 12, a healthy, supported and empowered community. 12.1 is the adoption of the Early Years Strategy 2022 to 2030. To present the report, I'll introduce Councillor Hewitt.
Thank you, Councillor Bray. I'm very pleased to present this report to you. The Starting Blocks Early and Middle Years Strategy 2022 to 2030 sets out the strategies that Council will, in partnership with other agencies in the community, undertake to deliver to support our children 0 to 12 years old within the Hepburn Shire area. As my fellow councillors know, I've worked for many years in child protection, so I'm very well aware of the importance of the early and middle years in setting the foundations for children's development. In this Shire, we have a number of children who are brought up in healthy, well-functioning families, but we also have a number of children who come to who are not so fortunate. And we know that, or I know, and I'm sure you do too, that kindergartens, childcare facilities are really important for children as part of their development. The early and middle years strategy 2022 to 2030 aims to give us a shared strategic direction to council and the early years sector to outline the service delivery, infrastructure and environment needed to ensure a vibrant future in the early years sector, ensures the health, learning and development needs of children aged 0 to 12 years are met and outcomes are improved, and ensure that parents, families and carers have the support they need in their child-related role. And that's really critical for the future development of our young people. The draft strategy is structured using 3 key focus areas: play and participate, grow and develop, and our future needs. And in introducing the report, I'd like to thank the officers for their comprehensive work in undertaking this. Kate Proctor, Fran Fogarty, but also Michelle White, who, as our community engagement expert, had some novel and interesting ideas to include such a section of our such a percentage of our early years citizens themselves. So what we have before us is a very comprehensive strategy and an officer's recommendation that council adopts the starting blocks early and middle years strategy 2022 to 2030.
Thank you, Councillor Hewitt. Do I have a seconder for that? Oh, no, wait. You're just presenting the report. Thank you for presenting the report. Do we have any questions for our officers tonight regarding this strategy? No questions. Thank you. So we have a recommendation before us, and that is that council adopts the starting blocks early and middle years strategy 2022 to 2030. Do I have a motion from the councillors?
I'll move it.
Councillor Hewitt, you're moving the officer's recommendation.
Officer's recommendation.
Seconded by Councillor Henderson. Would you like to speak to the motion?
I've possibly said enough in introducing the report, except to just to note, which perhaps I didn't say, that this is the first time that council's actually considered the middle years. We've looked at early years before, but our middle years from 5, 6 to 12 have not been considered before, and it's such a significant part of children's development as well. So officers are to be commended for introducing this into the early years strategy in our middle years, and that will segue into the youth strategy that's also currently under development.
Thank you, Councillor Hewitt. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, Madam Mayor, this has got a longer history than that. Many years ago, and that's how long I've been on council, I reckon it's nine years ago, I suddenly discovered when I was looking for some grants, we had money for the early years, and then we had youth money that started at 12 to 24, and we had 0 to 8. And I kept asking, where is children's money? Where is the formative years money? Where is their money? Well, there is none. And so we got some grants that have been coming through for that 8 to 12 years, and we even allowed, which we don't usually allow our grants, to the primary schools to be part of that. But there was nothing formalised. It was really just you could have some grants to do some programs. But this goes further than that, and this actually enshrines it in what we are intending to do as a council across the board for those young people. And I do commend the work, and it's been done from the bottom up. It's okay to council to make decisions, but when you make decisions where you involve young people in the strategy, they get some ownership of it. Parents get to appreciate that we are doing things and we are talking about it. And I think, and not to understate the input of grandparents, because many of the young people that are in that age bracket rely very much and ever more on their grandparents and other people in their lives, so an extended family. So this is a very, very important piece of work that the council does. And I think that we're on the right track because it all doesn't start with older people like myself, I'm sorry to tell you. It starts with the young people, and what we put into those young people, in other words, we reap what we sow. And if we sow the right seed, we're going to get the right crop. And I think that this council should show the way in doing that. And so I commend it to my fellow councillors.
Thank you, councillor Henderson. Any other councillor wish to speak to or against the motion? Yes, councillor Dryly.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just to support other councillors' comments, and just to add that this report emphasises the importance of young people in our shire, and the consideration that we need to give as a community to how our young people navigate their environment, and the health and well-being of those young people in our community. And we have significant challenges in the Hepburn Shire in terms of isolation and transport. There insert demographics in terms of a disadvantage that we need to address. And I think that strategies like this go a long way to reach achieving our goals in our community vision and plan, and I really support it.
Thank you, councillor Dryly. We have a motion before us. All those in favour? And that is passed or carried unanimously. Thank you very much. We're moving on to item number 13, which is embracing our past and planning for our future. This is item 13.1, the Daylesford Speedway Drivers Association Inc. lease at the Basin Reserve, Daylesford. And to present the report tonight, I'll invite councillor Henderson.
So I say embracing our past and planning for our future. Well, here we are. So council, in considering this report and its role as Committee of Management for the Basin Recreation Reserve, the purpose of this report is for council to consider the renewal of the lease with the Daylesford Speedway Drivers Association, DSDA, at the Basin Recreation Reserve following the comprehensive review taken.
Do councillors have any questions for officers on the Speedway lease agreement? Councillor Hewitt?
Questions, Mr. Bruce Lucas. Mr. Lucas, I understand that officers in recommending the lease be granted are satisfied that the noise levels coming from the actual events are not excessive under what can be expected from events of this nature.
Thank you, councillor, for your question. Through you, Madam Chair. I can confirm that in undertaking the review, officers considered a number of factors and engaged some external experts, if you like, to assist in that process. So through the track and building conditions on the site, we also looked at the financial viability of the association. We did also commission an acoustics report. There are no set standards in which to compare, if you like, the operation of the Speedway against. However, the acoustics report did suggest that it was okay and we could manage the noise by managing the time of operation and the number of events per annum.
Thank you.
Any other questions from councillors on the Speedway? If there are no other questions, we have an officer's recommendation, which I'll read, and that is that council grants the lease to the Daylesford Speedway Drivers Association Incorporated, the DSDA, for part of the Basin Reserve for a period of 6 years, plus a 6-year option in accordance with the attached lease document, which councillors have been provided with. 2, authorises the Chief Executive Officer and the Chair to execute the lease and affix the council's common seal. 3, authorises council officers to formally seek ministerial consent to endorse the new lease. And 4, authorises council officers to manage the exercise of extension option when it comes due, and authorises the Chief Executive Officer and the Chair to execute the renewal of lease and affix the council's common seal.
Yeah, apologies, councillor Bray, that should be Mayor.
Thank you. I was going to ask a question of the Chair, so I will.
Point 4.
Yeah, it appears a couple of times.
Correct. Through you, Chair, it is correct in the printed version of the agenda where it refers to Mayor and not
Thank you.
Chair as. Our apologies.
The officer's recommendation I have read out, please amend the word Chair and substitute the word Mayor. I'm in search of a motion, councillors. Councillor Henderson, what's your motion?
So I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation, Madam Mayor, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, councillor Henderson. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Simpson? Would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, just briefly, Madam Deputy Mayor. Look, once again, we're dealing with a minority group, and people might say they're noisy, and yes, they are. But what sort of a role do they play? Well, they play a training role for young people. Not all young people who make noise in cars actually go down to the speedway. I wish they did, instead of laying rubber on our roads. But they learn all sorts of mechanical skills. They learn skills about interaction with other people, and they learn driving skills. They've become very skilled, and the people who are in this sport have improved very much over the years. I remember plenty of complaints about the people who actually left the place. As they left, they decided to show off their skills on the road. I think that's a thing of the past. They're very careful about the oils that they spill and the petrochemicals, and I think that the sport in general has cleaned itself up. And I think this is, like I said, they're a minority and they're a noisy minority, but I think they play a role in our society, and I think it's a good role. So I commend it. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Henderson. Would anyone else like to speak for the motion? No? Would anyone? Yes, councillor Hewitt.
I'd just like to acknowledge that as council, we have had as councillors, Birchwood councillors, some complaints from some members of the community about the noise and about dust. And I have to say, I congratulate the officers in preparing this report for taking those complaints seriously and for talking with the Speedway and ensuring that the licence agreement does, first of all, commissioning the reports to investigate that, but then ensuring that the licence conditions do provide for provision to ensure that dust is kept at a minimum, the time of the Speedway, the amounts to address some of those concerns. As councillor Henderson has indicated, it is a legitimate sport and recreational activity that many people enjoy, that it does have a historical link to Daylesford in that it was formed after the Second World War through the RSL to provide activities for men returning from the war. And as councillor Bray reminded me earlier today, we have a former female champion in Ros Moynihan, who's unfortunately no longer with us. And so it is a sport that also does allow for, or does encourage and support female participation, as well as young people, young people. So it is a family orientated sport. And so for that reason, I'm happy to support the motion.
Thank you, councillor Hewitt. Are there any other councillors wishing to speak for or against the motion? There are no further councillors to speak. I'll put the motion that is before us to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Councillor Dryly, you're abstaining. Is that correct? Thank you. The motion is carried. Thank you. Move on to item 14, a dynamic and responsive council. Item 14.1 is the quarterly financial reports for Q3 2021-22 financial year. And to introduce the report, I'll call on Councillor Hood.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillors, we have before us the financial report for the 9 months to 31st of March, the 3-quarter time mark of this financial year, which we have considered this report before, and particularly in our deliberations over forming next year's budget. I'd suggest the 3 major highlights, which won't be news to us. In the 9 months, the first 9 months of the year, Council has incurred costs of $1.8 million in storm recovery works. Unfavourable to budget, unexpected costs. Nevertheless, Council has undertaken a significant range of works to counter the 2 weather-driven reports that we've had to date. That 1.8 unfavourable is quite significant for any organisation, and we are hopeful that the unfavourable aspect of that expenditure might improve slightly to about $1 million by the end of the year as more disaster recovery funds are received. The second point I'd like to point out is that we have invested in a whole range of capital works, $6.9 million to the end of March. But more importantly, there is a further $11.4 million of commitments made to deliver further projects, which would take us to about 18.3 million for the year, which is a very large range of work. Obviously, some may spill over into next financial year, but that's the reality. The world doesn't stop on the 30th of June. The third point, and particularly relevant to our deliberations over setting next year's budget, the table on page 12 indicates that at the end of March, we had an unrestricted cash amount of 1.63 million. And as we've all become very aware over our 18 months or so in office, unrestricted cash is an interesting concept and a very relevant one for councils. Through the 2 exercises we've done to trim the capital works budget, defer some projects and cancel others, we've managed to get that figure back into the black. I will note, though, that it is still particularly small. It's a fragile positive balance. As an organisation, council does incur cash costs of $100,000 a week. So that doesn't leave very much of a buffer. It's slim. And in comparison to the $12 million of current liabilities at the end of March, that leaves 13 cents in the dollar. And we have seen in our budget deliberations, our projections going forward are in the 14 to 20 cents in the dollar range. That just underlines how tight things remain until more corrective actions are put in place. So I commend the officer's report. It's the financials to the end of March. And we're asked to note those reports.
Thank you, Councillor Hood. So we have an officer's recommendation, and that is to note the that council notes the financial position and performance for the 9 months ending on the 31st of March 2022. And 2, that council notes the operating and capital works project reports effective from the 31st of March 2022, noting that the project reports will be placed on council's website. I'm in search of a motion. Councillor wishing to move a motion. Councillor Hood.
I'll move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Hood. Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Simpson, seconding. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Hood?
I'd like to correct myself, Madam Deputy Mayor. I just made the comment that council incurs cash costs of $100,000 a week. It's not. We incur cash costs of $100,000 per day,
Thank you, councillor Hood, for making that clarification.
which helps put the 1.6 million cash reserves into an entirely different light. It's per day, 365 days per year.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak for or against the motion? Thank you, councillor Simpson.
I'd just like to endorse what councillor Hood has said and recommend the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, councillor Simpson. Any other councillors wishing to speak? No, I have a motion in front of us. I would like to put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. We're moving on to 14.2, the annual plan 2021 to 2022. Quarter 3 update from January to March 2022. Councillor Hewitt will introduce the report.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. The report, there's a full report included in the agenda, which provides a list of the projects included in the annual plan 2021 to 2022, and officers have provided a progress comment on each of those projects. But just to note that those projects are priorities from the council meeting, the council plan 2017 to 2021, and the annual budget 2021 to 2022 doesn't include any new activities that were on from then or introduced from then. Some of the projects have been delayed because, and some of the delays relate to delays in the timing of government funding, delays in the project delivery in recent months as a consequence of some of the impacts of COVID and some of the impacts of officers having to deal with the natural disasters that have occurred in June and January this year. Just as a summary, 13 of the projects are in progress and on track. 12 are complete. 1 is not due to start yet. 5 have been cancelled as part of our budget review, and 13 have been delayed, but they're ongoing, and generally it's been because they've been impacted on by procurement issues, finding people to do the work issues, all related to the current economic circumstances. So thank you.
Thank you, councillor Hewitt, for presenting that.
Do we have an officer's recommendation that we note?
Yeah. Do we have any
Annual
questions
plan.
for officers on the annual plan? No questions for officers. I have an officer's recommendation, and that is that council notes the annual plan 2021-22 quarter 3 update, and 2 notes that this report will be published on council's website. Do I have a mover to move the officer's recommendation?
Move the officer's recommendation.
And a seconder, councillor Hood, seconding. Anyone wish to speak for the motion?
Just to note that the report is in the agenda and it will be on the council's website. So any interested community members, I would encourage them to have a look at it. The information is available.
Thank you, councillor Hewitt, and it is a very interesting read. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against the motion? In that case, we have a motion before us. I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. All right, so we're moving on to 14.3, recommendations from the Audit and Risk Committee meeting held on the 28th of March 2022. I will ask councillor Dryly to introduce this report.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The purpose of this report is for councillors to consider advice from the Audit and Risk Committee meeting that was held on the 28th of March 2022. The Audit and Risk Committee assists council with oversight in the areas of risk, governance, financial management and compliance. Its membership of the committee comprises of 6 members. There's 2 councillors and 4 external independent persons. The Audit and Risk Committee is a committee of council under Section 53 of the Local Government Act 2020, and it's not a delegated committee of the council in that it does not have any decision-making powers of council. And the committee meets quarterly, and the Audit Risk Committee meetings are not open to the public. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. We have an officer's recommendation that council receive the draft minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee meeting that was held on the 28th of March 2022, and 2 notes the recommendations of the Audit and Risk Committee that were moved at the meeting on the 28th of March 2022. I'm in search of a motion. Councillor Hood.
I'd like to move the officer's recommendation as tabled.
Councillor Hood, moving the officer's recommendation. To have a seconder, Councillor Henderson, to second that motion. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Hood?
I have nothing further to add. Thanks.
Councillor Henderson, no. Anyone wish to speak against the motion? Well, we have a motion before us. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? All those in favour? That's Riley, Councillor Hewitt, Councillor Hood, and Councillor Simpson, and Councillor Henderson. All those against? And 1 abstaining. So that motion has been carried. We move on to 14.4, the approval of interstate travel to attend the National General Assembly. We have 2 members who have a conflict of interest, Councillor Tim Dryley and our CEO. We'll just ask them to leave.
Councillor Dryley into the waiting room.
Thank you. They have a conflict of interest. And that is 14.4, the approval of interstate travel to attend the National General Assembly Partners in Progress Conference in 2022. So I'll introduce this report. The purpose of this is for council to consider the approval of travel arrangements for the Mayor, Councillor Tim Dryley, and the Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Bradley Thomas, to attend the National General Assembly Partners in Progress Conference in 2022. The purpose of the conference is for local governments to engage directly with the federal government to develop national policy and to influence the future directions of council and our community. We have a recommendation before us, and that is that council approve the interstate travel for the Mayor, Tim Dryley, and Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Bradley Thomas, to attend the National General Assembly Partners in Progress Conference in 2022. And 2, to approve the expenditure estimates for travel of $6,728 for both the Mayor and the CEO. And 3, notes that this amount includes $500 for incidentals that may occur and that cannot be prepaid by council. 4, notes that any additional expenditure identified once bookings have been made be reported to a future ordinary council meeting. And 5, notes that the Mayor and the Chief Executive Officer to prepare a report regarding the conference for a future ordinary council meeting. Have that recommendation before us. Do I have a motion?
I have a point of clarification, which I've just realised, perhaps to Mr. Burgess. The $6,728 for both the Mayor and the CEO, I'm assuming is both, that's not $6,728 each, but in total.
Through you, Madam Deputy Mayor, that is correct. It's in total.
Thank you. That's just a point of clarification. Happy to move it.
Any other questions before we move on? You're happy to move that as the officer's recommendation? Anyone to second that motion? Thank you, Councillor Hood. To second that, anyone wish to speak for the motion? Anyone wish to speak against the motion? Yes, thank you, Councillor Henderson.
Madam Deputy Mayor. Madam Deputy Mayor, we've embarked upon these little exercises before and they haven't been very successful. I might say there's many councils from throughout Australia who want to get the ear of a very few people. And it's more or less developed, as has been described to me, by one federal member as better off to spend your time lobbying your local member, because your local member can get the ear of the relevant minister far easier than you can by going up to Canberra. And so I actually think that there's better ways we could spend the $6,000 if we can't even guarantee by this, we actually get a hearing, that we actually get anyone to listen to us. I liken it to the press gallery where you've got the Prime Minister standing up there and everybody's wanting to ask a question and get the ear, and only a few do. So I do think that we're better off spending the money elsewhere. However, I do hope that we're successful, and that, but I'm just not spending that amount of money on a maybe. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Henderson. Does anyone else wish to speak for or against the motion?
Well, I have a right of reply. Thank you. I certainly understand councillor Henderson's concerns about whether the money will be well spent or not. I do appreciate that there will be a number of CEOs and mayors present at this meeting and the difficulty in attracting attention. However, it's my view that the CEO and the mayor will be very well prepared and able to make the most of the opportunities that present them. And I think there's always a risk at not being at these things that also needs to be factored in, a lost opportunity rather than with. So whilst I do understand councillor Henderson's concerns, and I have a great deal of sympathy, of support for that, and I agree with him that we can be effective in contacting and lobbying our local members, I do have confidence in our CEO and mayor.
Thank you, councillor Hewitt. If there's no other councillors to speak to the motion or against the motion, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? I've lost councillor Tim Dryley. Oh, that's right, he stepped out. Thank you. Those in favour, councillor Hewitt, councillor Hood, councillor Simpson, councillor Bray. Those against, councillor Henderson.
Call a division, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I call it carried and I call a division. So those in favour, councillor Hewitt, councillor Hood, councillor Simpson, councillor Bray. Those against, councillor Henderson. That is carried. Thank you, Mal. We can bring our CEO and Mayor back into the room. The next item of general business, councillor Simpson has a conflict of interest.
Mayor, can I move that council approves an extension of the ordinary council meeting 17th of May until the remaining items on the agenda have been considered, given that we are very, very close to 8:30?
Yes, thank you, councillor Hood, for suggesting that motion. I have a seconder, councillor Henderson, to second that motion. Those in favour that we extend. That is carried. Thank you. So, continuing. Thank you, councillor Simpson.
The Mayor and the CEO, the outcome of that last item.
Welcome back, Mayor Dryley and CEO Bradley Thomas. I can just confirm for you that we have approved your trip to the Bahamas. Sorry, the National Council General Assembly Partners in Progress Conference 2022. Apologies. Okay, we are now at general business item 15.1. The purpose of this report is to consider a leave of absence for councillor Juliet Simpson from the 23rd of June 22 to the 13th of July 22. Councillors, we have a recommendation before us, and that is that council grants councillor Simpson a leave of absence from the 23rd of June 22 to the 13th of July 2022, inclusive, noting that councillor Simpson will continue to attend briefings and council meetings virtually during her leave. Anyone have any questions for officers regarding that item? Would anyone like to move a motion?
I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Moving the officer's recommendation. A seconder, councillor Hewitt, seconding.
I believe the officer's recommendation in writing includes 2 points. Potentially point probably become aware that point 2 is obsolete. So
Right.
councillor might be of a mind to just move to officer's recommendation with point 1 only. Maybe.
Councillor
Happy to so move, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Henderson, moving the officer's recommendation with only point 1 as is relevant. And the second is happy with that. In that case, does anyone wish to speak for or against the motion? No. In that case, I will put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Can we request that councillor Simpson be brought back into the room? That councillor Simpson, I can confirm that your leave has been granted. Thank you. That is the end of all the items that we have on tonight's agenda. So I declare at exactly 8:30, the meeting to be closed. Thank you all for attending. Thank you, officers, for the work and preparation for the meeting tonight. Thank you, councillors, for all your diligence. And thank you for the community that have come in person and those that are watching at home. We appreciate your participation in council policy. Thank you.